Meanwhile, on Sargasso...
Is this supposed to be a counterpart to any of our planets back
Yes,
home, or...
remember, Sargasso premiered in Tools of Destruction. It was this one planet where we found the smuggler.
Nefarious, who used it to bring you here? Now you just have to find your friend, who is also miraculously a Lombax, to save the day.
And get home.
You must seriously think I'm an idiot. Look, as real as I'm sure this Dr. Nefarious is, this has...
So yeah, Rivet has more or less taken Clank hostage and has taken to her own planet, alongside where also her family lives, the Morts. We will meet them later, don't worry.
Also,
watch out,
interesting.
You're gonna crash! Oh!
Apparently in this world, Nefarious is kind of like a legend in the sense that she's not even sure if Nefarious exists.
No, it's because...
Unless he's just called the Emperor here.
Yeah, and also he's currently away, so it doesn't match with her intel. By all accounts, he shouldn't be present, because she's not believing Clank just yet.
I was gonna take you to my hideout. First, I gotta rescue my friends.
And now we're playing as her.
Yeah, okay, it's worth noting immediately for me to say this. There's virtually no difference in moveset between Ratchet and Rivet. They just have, a different aesthetic and a different weapon. Ratchet has his trusty Omni Wrench, while Rivet has... I forgot actually what the specific name is, but it's listed in the option. It's more like of a hammer that functions as a... car lever, those that you pull up your car in order to change a tire or something.
It'd be so funny if they called it a space hammer just to rip off of the hammer space thing.
It's worth noting that, according to development interviews, the devs did wanted to have Rivet play considerably different from Ratchet. But I can imagine the development cycle and, the way the game ended up being probably would have caused a bit of an imbalance, in a sense that they would have had to adjust a lot of things specifically for the different playstyles of Rivet. So they basically cut at the middle and says, you can play, you do play as both, but they play virtually identical, so that you don't lose track on your player progression, basically. The downside in this is that, I argue, the arsenal of our characters, including the gadgets, magically stays the same, and while it works for this beginning, the idea that Rivet has the same equipment that Ratchet had, and as mentioned here by Ms. Zircon, their bank account, quote-unquote, is shared, so, they use the same amount of bolts and everything. Later on, the characters will obtain specific upgrades that the other characters shouldn't have, but in the next world they magically have out of nowhere. Anyway, more on that later. New weapon type, the Topiary Sprinkler. This combines the turret weapon with a freezing one, just that it sprays flowers that entangle the enemy. All peace and
lovely.
love.
Poison Ivy would
How
love it.
specific.
Well, don't you know, peace and love is preached by Stanley the Troll at the end of Troll in Central Park.
No.
Keep in mind, New York City ends basically an overgrown jungle, like in The Last of Us, basically, in that movie.
Always
and
missing
it's
the
treated
giraffes,
as a happy ending. Jesus Christ. I don't know if we mentioned this before, but actually, both voice actresses for Mrs. Zircon are in and voicing her. But the thing is, okay, there's a slight distinction. Apparently, the female Zircon on this realm is known as Miss Zircon, played by Courtney Taylor.
Yeah, we did mention in the previous part. While back in our world in the first part, she was still voiced by Ali Hills.
And she's called Mrs. Zircon there, so...
Appellative and all.
Interesting.
Again, it virtually changes not much outside of what I mentioned about that in terms of pacing. I believe we should have introduced the shop later, Next part we're actually gonna meet, if I recall correctly, where Mr. Zircon has gone to.
I'm guessing it's a case where we go back and forth between worlds and they really want to differentiate between the two. Now, that being said, one thing of interest is that we've got actually a really gigantic voice actress who's playing the Emperor's assistant, Kimberly Brooks, essentially. Like, big-time actress. And I mean, She's been in the game since like the 90s, if not early 80s.
Yeah,
and whatnot.
I remember her name, but I forgot exactly what your resume actually has.
Okay, she's been in stuff as early as Rugrats in 1991. She's played a few characters in the Powerpuff Girls. She was Puff and Madeline Spaulding in the Static Shock series. A very noticeable character she is Luna, one of the Hex Girls from Scooby-Doo, and she basically has been Luna in every appearance from the Hex Girls. She's Mrs. Saunders in Justice League.
Okay,
She
what
was in
about
Lucha
video games,
Lucha. Okay, video game-wise. She was in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 as Psylocke and Firestar.
Okay.
She was Sarah Cassidy and Barbara Gordon / Oracle in Batman Arkham Asylum. She plays the Frogs in Metal Gear Solid 4. Ashley Williams in Mass Effect. Oh, she's Murphy in Superman Doomsday the movie. Mystery Inc. Once again, Luna. She was also in Mass Effect 3, once again as Ashley Williams.
Yeah, that's a bit unfortunate because Ashley, who wasn't in Mass Effect, from Mass Effect games, Ashley is the kind of, terrestrial human, very super racist against alien species, and the Kelvin Mountain doesn't really go that far as Shepard can bang her.
I really feel like I wonder if she was supposed to finally get, some development by the end of 3, but oh god, the whole development issues
Anyway,
with Mass Effect 3 could fill up its own video.
Since we're on Sargasso, unfortunately, one thing that has been there for, connected to the original, timeline saga and everything, is the fact that the poison swamps are acid, but this game actually gives you a way to traverse them. The Speetle, as showcased, are these bug creatures, which I think they will steal the same kind of model as the snails from the future saga, so we're still using those, okay? And Rivet, and later Ratchet, can actually hop on and use them, as a steed. So you do get another gameplay style for these.
In terms of them reusing assets, I guess one benefit they do have with this being a multiversal venture is, these are technically, their counterparts from the other dimension and all
yeah, it's
that
basically
jazz.
their excuse. Again, I'm not too bothered by these, honestly. Again, I'm more bothered by the stuff like the Sand Sharks and the Amoeboids being reused a bit willy-nilly, because some of those monsters did have a specific reason why they would be only on those planets,
And like you mentioned, sometimes they take design cues from the reimagining instead of the original, even though this is supposed to be in continuity with the original.
That's funny, because she says, I don't crash, and yet you crashed into boxes.
Plutonium factory. Incoming, Morts.
We didn't follow that Lombax and his roboped across dimensions just to get stopped by some fuzzballs.
You guys got paid enough to chase us across dimensions. I can't believe it.
So yeah, here are the Morts. Their gimmick is that they're all called Mort. No, I don't know how they managed to distinguish one another. Shut up. And their gimmick is you'll be able later, and with a bit of an unfortunate timing, they are all speaking a Midwest Minnesotan accent, and they incarnate the stereotype of being super nice and wanting lemonade.
Another Lombax. Well, that's where your friend is, Rosafina.
I do wonder if part of the reason Insomniac settled on having Rivet and Ratchet play similarly was maybe due to the fact that they're even structured similarly to each other, so they had trouble really trying to justify differentiating
That's
the
because
two.
Rivet actually went through a couple of different designs. You can find concept arts online, and some of these designs did reflect the role which was supposed to have. They imagined her potentially as a beast tamer, or as a mystic, or something more tech-based, someone more tech-based, but ultimately they went with just a more one-to-one, counterpart to Ratchet.
The Mystic one does sound like an interesting idea, since Ratchet and Clank do tend to rely on technology, so having her and whoever her partner or counterpart is rely on mysticism would be an interesting parallel.
You're here saving our behinds.
In case you're wondering where are the cartridges, because if you forgot on Sargasso, they were the ones mostly controlling it. Don't worry, the Infobot of this world will actually tell you what happened to them.
Oh boy.
Oh.
Also, Miss Zircon's just jamming in the background.
Don't worry, I'll take care of it. Oh, and to keep you all busy while I'm gone, got this at Zerky's. Mort can finally fix that ship she's been working on.
Zerky's? Oh, those pirates didn't give you any trouble, did they?
Only a
This is
little.
just saying something that Rivet did off screen, but it's not too important. It's just a component for a ship. For a new ship, but unfortunately that is entangled into an anomaly. Now, interesting enough, you have to do two things. Oh, so first of all, new weapon, the Ricochet. This is a bit interesting. So yeah, it's structured like a pinball machine.
Yeah, so kind of like the laser from Sonic Colors, with it ricocheting off of different surfaces and
It
enemies.
even does pinball sounds as you hit the enemies.
I love how these vendors from a completely different dimension already had a video ready to go using Ratchet.
Next stop.
Yeah, that too. It's a bit weird that they don't have one prepped for using Rivet doing the exact same thing. Now, you have to do two things now. You have to, one, go to Rivet location in order to study about, you know, Clank and everything, and to study the anomaly and potentially free it, you know, to unlock the new ship. But, through tradition, you can kind of do those in the order you prefer to. I just did not realize it immediately, because it's been a while since I remember this game. So I went instead to first to Rivet's layout, but again, you can choose whatever you want here. So yeah, much like in the OG Dimension, unfortunately this version of Sargasso also has ground tours. But however, since there is no smuggler here, so we can sell their souls to him, we just, you know, are okay with just collecting Ranitanium from them, plus the balls. I mean, I'm not complaining.
No more hostiles within range.
Rivet, we raised the bridge to your hideout.
Such a shame, given how back in our home dimension, usually we get rare items or, God help us, collectibles from them.
Well, no. Usually they were just there for farming purposes, you know.
But you get what I mean, though. The smuggler was all about how you harvest the best things from them and all that jazz.
Here, they're basically here to farm Raritanium, which, you know, is always appreciated for me, because a lot of the games just don't really have it that much and, you know, incentivize you to play on challenge mode to complete the arsenal. But in here, you can potentially max out everything in your first run if you want, just with dedication.
Don't tell me, my
Again, the layout of the controller is a bit more streamlined, but for example, the circle button is dedicated to the dash, for example. But if you recall correctly, you can remap everything at your own leisure. It's part of the accessibility feature anyway.
So I'm guessing both Ratchet and Clank were affected by that rift, which is why Rivet can do that rift thing with Clank attached to her.
Yes, well, yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, Ratchet could do that because he had a fragment of Phase Quartz, but they never established that Rivet had one on her.
Yeah. This is why I assume it has to do with Clank being attached to her, though if I recall correctly, she has her own counterpart to Clank, so if they're still doing it by that point and she doesn't have Clank with her, hopefully they come up with a reason
No,
why
I get
she
the idea
can.
they really just, you know, cut the shit at the root in order to avoid having players being forced to, you know, do specific things with one of the characters. Again, I get it, you know, and to be fair, I think they wanted this in order to potentially not let the players who enjoy Rivet's gameplay to feel potentially, either of them being feeling demeaned by having a character clearly, playing a bit better or having more stuff to do than another. So, instead, since they do identically the exact same thing, you can have the adventure, flowing better with both of them.
I was gonna ask, is this basically a Crash 4 case where eventually Ratchet and Rivet are just basically the same and it's just a matter of preference who you want to play as? Or is it more like Crash Bandicoot Wrath of Cortex where there actually are slight differences between them?
They're technically the first, but with an asterisk in it, because, believe it or not, if you are pondering about the plot point of, is the entire game gonna be about the two having their own separate adventures and then they will actually meet at the end? No, the game will not waste that much time in order to have Ratchet and Rivet actually meet. It will find excuses for them to go still on separate ways rather than being, being playing together all, at the same time. But the thing is that, at least as far as I know, I haven't experimented much, but basically the game is still structured in a way where Ratchet and Rivet have access to specific planets, on their own. So you can only play on Rivet on specific world, and you can only play as Ratchet on specific world. You cannot swap. And if you, switch to another world mid-through, the story just tells, oh, I wonder what Rivet is doing right now, and we skip to, to her and vice versa.
So at the very least, they're not going to carry on this whole, Rivet doesn't trust Ratchet and Clank for a while, and Ratchet and Clank won't be split up for a while.
Much like with a lot of things, this game doesn't, as I mentioned, doesn't want to waste your time even on that, which I am particularly grateful on. Like I said, the plot is not the most Shakespearean. I still believe Cracking Time was better refined.
And my name is not Bolts.
So, yeah, that's the nickname that Rivet gave. You might have also noticed that she has included a couple of Buffy speak mannerism in her speech, like thingy. For some reason, this gets kind of dropped after this word, so I do wonder if it's a remnant of the different scripts this game went through. And
possible.
But again, it doesn't really bother me. It's just that it's just weird that she starts like this and then drops it.
Oh, she drops it. Okay,
well,
that's
weird. It's not a in-universe thing where she says that she's dropping it, but if you pay attention to the dialogue, it's not really a consistent thing, is what I'm saying.
No, I get what you mean. It's like how Mighty Number 9, Seismic at first speaks like the Hulk, even when he's, not brainwashed, but then suddenly he speaks just fine later on. No,
I really wish that instead the ice-related Mighty will actually stop using freezing palms every 2 seconds. But hey, you cannot ask for a miracle, I guess.
Tio, that's what made her so endearing. No. And hey, when she's crazy, she goes pew 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 pew. So
10 years
I guess
later,
her
I am still mad.
God. I swear, that game just felt like anything that it seemed like you could maybe enjoy. Nope, let's introduce something to ruin it.
I may regret suggesting this, but what about the Speedle?
What about it?
There will be time to mention about part of the development, especially because it's kind of a delicate subject and I want you to actually absorb the game at least for a while before moving on to that.
Sure. Alright, I guess I'll go into another thing here in that. Again, I do dig Rivet's design here. Like, I'll admit, when we first saw her, a lot of people were kind of worried she was literally just going to be Ratchet, copy and paste, but a girl and whatnot. But I do see some differentiation, while also some parallels to Ratchet. Like Ratchet in the first game, you can tell that, well, okay, she's not as trusting, which is, again, a thing Ratchet had. One difference, though, it seems to be that whereas Ratchet was a lot more self-serving in the first game, she is a lot more selfless, at least in regards to those she specifically cares about and whatnot. Not to say that Ratchet, didn't give a mess about anyone here and there. He definitely cared about stuff like his plan in Veldin, but you could tell he was looking out for numero uno back in the first game, up until he really had to rise to the challenge. So, again, I can dig that parallel here and there. I wonder if we're going to get some backstory behind why Rivet appears to be an amputee.
Yes, you do. Yeah, actually, yeah, it is a big important plot point about how she got her prosthetic arm. But again, all in due time.
So, yeah, no. I'll save that inquiry for when we learn more about Rivet and whatnot.
For now, you just need to defeat the Grand Tour, and if I recall correctly, then it basically unlocks the way for you to get to Rivet's hideout. They introduced before the same gimmick that was in the 2016 reimagining about the step on 3 platforms in order to unlock something. Again, those who actually have played the franchise recently, you know, as for example, as I showcased to us, would notice that despite the time gap, ideas from Into the Nexus and the reimagining still bled into this, and they still fit perfectly fine.
From what I can see, this is a lot like how the 7 remake did take some cues from Final Fantasy XIII, but, you know, obviously made them not crap there and whatnot.
Yeah, you know,
I do wonder...
Like I was gonna say about the metal, the chocobo theme, but that would imply that, you know, I have nothing but contempt for that song.
I'm guessing as to why they maybe kept some ideas from the reimagining and Into the Nexus. To be fair, in spite of those games' issues, I wouldn't say that they were completely irredeemable. Like, I know that reimagining definitely did not have the best reputation, but again, for people who played it, I could still call it a disappointment in some regards, but it wasn't necessarily a torture to play, per se. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, I'd still stick with the original, but there were ideas, so hey, it's nice to see them put to good use in a better game. I'm guessing maybe it's like you mentioned also, there were some developmental issues. Maybe it was a case where they just didn't have time to come up with completely new fleshed out stuff.
The game. I'm supposed to follow a bit of a narrow path that takes me up, or, you know, I can just do this.
I wonder, is the game made with this sequence breaking somewhat in mind, or is it just that viable?
Sometimes you get a line of lamp shading, kind of that, but other times you can just do it if you want.
Yeah, it's like I said, this game feels like, I feel like if you're strictly going for speedrunning techniques, this would probably be one's favorite game in the series.
Alright, time to hook up Clank.
A lie detector to tell if he's really telling the truth.
More like she's just downloading his memories.
Guess that's the best way to get
it's
it.
A bit. I can understand that it feels really rude, but to be fair, she has no proof, you know, of what he claims. So, and already attitude towards machines, in particular, is a bit peculiar. Let's just say that. But at least she apologizes.
Being honest.
As I have been saying repeatedly.
You're Nefarious. He looks a lot like mine. Evil like him, too. And that Lombax. I know it might sound crazy, but...
You think he is your dimensional counterpart.
Or something. Look, whatever's going on here, we're gonna fix it.
We? I thought robots are not your thing.
Not all of them, just most.
Hashtag not all yeah, hashtag not all robots, sure.
Yeah, I see the irony too.
Oh.
Honestly, I don't, Clank. I don't think a prosthetic bionic arm is the equivalent of a fully, you know, machine with piloted by an AI. But, you know, you do you, game.
I'm guessing he's going off of the idea of, look, your part of you is like me.
No, Dibs, in case you're wondering, it's not gonna explode. I was thinking the same thing too, don't worry.
This message will self-destruct in about
3 seconds. It actually sends like a...
It sends a location beep for the this machine in particular.
Well, that's the thing, Tio. They already finished the conversation. Yeah, I wasn't going to interrupt it.
Go here. No. Ah.
Damn, this really hasn't been Clank's day.
No, at all.
He just gets grabbed by person after person.
So yeah, now you're about to have, well, taking a chase, but in general a boss fight against the Seeker Pig, as it's called. And again, to be fair, the game is kind of built up to this moment. Even outside of this very world, the Seeker Pig is one of the first things that you see when you boot up the game, so you do know that, you know, maybe at some point it will be integrated somehow. So, you know, classic FPS type of set piece will build up.
Alright, team, we've played Shadow of the Colossus, so we know how to down this guy.
No, actually, we need to use the strategy that Tails tells us in Sonic Boom Rise of Lee. We can use ramps as ramps to jump on.
Of course! Genius! Remember, the kid has a high IQ, so of course he knew what he meant when he was saying that.
Yeah, I'm surprised the Tannoy on that ship we're chasing isn't like, be advised. Be advised, Hairy Furball has gone insane. She is talking to herself.
Also, poor Clank gets, you know, bounced all over the place. Alright, now that the Seeker Pig is stuck in one location, you have to actually deal with it properly.
Emperor's got some weak standards, and that's a guy.
It has basically two types of attack, that laser that you saw, and the sweeping motion, like this.
Give me back my robot.
Lovely. Wait, your robot? He belongs to the world!
Sure. I love how just, you know, joyful the robots of Emperor Nefarious do sound.
Yes.
I don't remember.
Imagine
This game does have some pretty funny dialogue.
Again, it was also present in a cracking time, but because of all the mayhem happening and the sound mixing, you were not really capable of hearing much about it. So at the very least, I am gladful that, you know, this one actually balances things out, so, you know, you can actually enjoy what you're saying.
And I can't stress enough how much I do appreciate how they went above and beyond to pretty much subtitle just about every source of dialogue this time here.
Alright, round
Like,
2.
In we
Close it
go.
up.
In the end.
It doesn't even matter.
Well, how are you going to do that for a second?
I also love that motion, while Rivet was standing on a Seeker Pit, was almost identical to one of the cutscenes, most cutscenes in the boss fight that you get in the Strider 2014 video game against the first boss, the Ouroboros Mark III. But again,
Funny coincidence
yeah,
or
just
secretly intentional?
Just a coincidence, I can't believe that.
No, don't you see, this is a stealth hint that we're getting a Strider and Ratchet crossover in
Very, very
2029.
specific, yes.
Yeah, it's Sony and Capcom, and the crossover that maybe one or two people were asking
The
for.
best part about it is when you will get the same commercial from the Genesis Mega Drive version of the game, where you get the three naked men saying, "Oh, ha ha."
God, part of me misses that era of commercials.
Just don't get it. What was the vision?
I think it went to the same school of thought as the Segata Sanshiro commercials.
Well,
It's
Segata
not about
Sanshiro
making
actually
sense.
was more clever because he was doing stuff that was tied to the game. For Bomberman, he was bombing someone. For Deep Fear, he was gutting a fish. You know, there was a logic behind it. But what three men yelling at nothing has to do with Tale of a Ninja defeating a space alien that is controlling the world? But
Clearly, they were trying to attract the female audience by implying that they're naked men in the game.
sure. Bonk.
Hammer time!
Poor Clank.
Bolts?
I actually have a name, you know.
After me.
At least call him Clank at this point.
No, she's actually gonna stick with it. I think maybe once or
Okay.
twice in the entire game she's gonna call him that, but, you know, That's your new nickname now. Deal with deal with
How
it.
about the Morts caught up
Ratchet and Bolts.
Also,
I don't
I
think it's gonna
really-
catch on.
Also, I do dig how they're flexing how high-powered the cutscenes are by showing them basically seamlessly go right into the gameplay.
Again,
from
remember,
there.
no pre-render cutscene. All of them are also using in-engine, so you transition fully without black screen, technically, outside of, going from planet to planet, and everything that the character has in terms of, accessories that you equip, it's showcased if you want. So,
That would be delightful.
alright, so now it only remains to resolve that weird anomaly. And if you recall, in Into the Nexus, Clank had been equipped to deal with the stuff from the Neververse, so maybe he can still help.
Do not enter. Got it.
May I take a look? I have some experience with dimensional anomalies.
Yeah, just a few.
Sure.
So yeah, it's Clank in a fruity, filter. Oh, hello.
Okay, now we're in the Vimto dimension.
Welcome! How did you get in here?
Where exactly is, here?
Oh, you don't know? Well, I don't either. It appears to be a space between dimensions.
So the space between dimension, gives you bisexual light, I guess.
Soup. Time will tell.
Of course.
Oh dear. Well, I am Clank. Please allow me to help.
Right, yes.
It's nice to know that in the astral space, Clank gets his arm back.
Prophet of interdimensional sector 2255 phase Omega. But you can call me Gary.
That's very specific.
Well, yeah, the subtitles already told me that.
Former warbot, teamed up with the Lombax.
Oh, artwork from All for One, if I recall correctly.
Ooh, friend of my father.
We will learn who the father of this character is, but you might get already an idea considering what this guy is capable of knowing. So, these sections are basically there to be the Clank section of the game, giving you something to do for that. So instead of a gadget bot, you have the copies that are Clank's possibility. Don't try to wrap your hand around too much. Think of it of the idea that there's an infinite number of possibility of Clank solving this dimension, and you just need to even the odds in order to make that possibility a reality.
Also interesting, just like Kraken Time, a quirky character who happens to be in charge of this all-powerful cosmic entity device and whatnot, who needs Clank's help.
We will probably meet Gary in person later on. Shit. Okay, I think...
Don't worry, it's one of many possibilities, you're fine.
I can use this moment to talk about something that I wanted to say also for glitches section. For these specific sequences, the game gives you in the options menu, there you go, you need to do this to pass through, and 3 phases because rule of 3. The game gives you a specific option in the menu, or in pause menu, that lets you skip entirely the puzzle altogether, and makes you, proceed through the next story bit. I already made no secret that I'm not particularly a fan of these things, and I have to be honest, these really almost feel like you're not confident enough in your level design. Like, for speedrun purposes, I do get it, but it kind of feels like the kind of thing that you will have to unlock to have it in New Game Plus. That I can understand it better because you already know about the game, so maybe you just want to get to a part that you like, but you pass through. But not only these sections are argue not particularly brain, hard in terms of as puzzle solving, but they also contain dialogue that, while not necessarily plot critical, is not only interesting to hear, also kinda nice to experience. And instead, you just give an option to player to just say, fuck it, bring me to the next, bit. I don't know, I feel like this could have been handled better, is what I'm saying.
I think part of the issue is the day and age we live in. Like, okay, unfortunately, for some people, they may not feel that they have as much time for games here and there, and Unfortunately, also due to the fact that a lot, and I do mean a lot of game series now are taking forever to make new installments, now little kids these days have way less patience and tend to go to more live service stuff so they don't feel as in-depth with the actual core games. What I'm getting at is, like, it's one thing for critics, but I do feel that for some people, they want to be into a certain type of game, but they'll feel waylaid or stuck when, you know, a game that they're into suddenly throws in a different gameplay style that they may not care for as much, per se. Now, again, I'm not saying that that means we should make it so that there's an automatic I win button, but I unfortunately do get maybe why some devs are doing it in that case, especially since for accessibility's sake. There are admittedly also some cases where people who may have disabilities that kind of do, you know, hinder them in some of these spot patterns here and there, like maybe they have some issue here and there, in which case I would say that's a legitimate reason why they give something of a playthrough, like, and mind you, I'm talking about how we live in a day and age where nowadays, even flipping Ace Attorney now has basically a movie playthrough story mode. And
yeah, and I
whatnot,
already
so-
made no secret that I don't like particularly that either, for different reasons than these.
I love how, yeah, even though Clank got cross, he was still talking.
Yeah, it's another thing that they keep. To be fair, they're basically implying that Clank is astral projecting himself into this, and it's also why he can move freely and he has, you know, both of his arm. If you noticed, ever since the accident with the Dimensionator, he cannot move his legs, and he has lost one arm. So, and this
So it
will be
does-
basically a thing for the entire game, mind you. So this is also
I'm guessing-
giving you something to do.
I hope I'm not interrupting your process, but I think there are more spheres left to find.
Things are looking up now.
No, again, to continue what you were saying, Drova, no, I do get it, but like I said, it really feels like there should be more of a going to the middle to actually find middlemen into this, because otherwise all you need to tell me is that basically your level design is on its own not competent enough to be basically accessible to everyone, so you know you have a failsafe option that allows you to just bypass all the stuff that the devs built on it. I don't know, it feels to me that it could be actually handled with a bit more grace at the very least.
Well, okay,
And this,
Occam's
and mind
raised.
you, and this on top of the game doing the modern game thing of, you know, being very afraid that the players don't get the solution to a puzzle, and if they don't get it after at least a bit, they almost tell you immediately the answer.
Okay, I will say this. Occam's Razor executives mandated, you know, sort of like the playthrough mode and whatnot. I could see,
Anyway,
because, like,
anomaly done.
so does Clank just stays out when he goes to that
Yes,
astral plane?
It's implied that everything takes place in like one split second, and it's all a matter of perspective.
How'd you do that?
I am uncertain.
Rivet! How the heck?
Again, you gotta love the irony how even though Clank's all about technology and whatnot, he often gets saddled with the much more mystical stuff when you think about it, despite being a robot.
City went totally sideways. I wrecked my ship, and
You go on and leave that one to old Mort. Well, assuming you brought that part I asked for, I'll have this old thing in.
It all comes together.
So yeah, if
I
you
will-
solve this as last, your ship is immediately ready. Otherwise, you have to go to Rivet's, you know, lair first.
I will give credit to this game. It's letting Jennifer Hale show off her range. Like, usually whenever you hear Jennifer Hale, she's kind of doing, like, the Black Cat voice, you know, sultry,
Yeah, Jenny,
bit
like
low and whatnot.
Phoenix, you know, Jean Grey.
Yeah, like, here we get to see her do a more bubbly-sounding voice, honestly, which we don't hear her do as often.
Alright, before moving on, let me use this time to actually grab a couple of collectibles here, including opening what is commonly referred to many people as the Exploit Dimension. Similar to the Certified Com Dungeon from Bloodborne, this is a place that has an infinitely respawning amount of boxes. So if you happen to use the Ricochet here, which, as mentioned in its description, does not consume ammo if it doesn't meet an organic target that you can kill, you can destroy the boxes to gain a virtually infinite amount of bolts. You know, just if you have enough patience for it. I admit this is more useful in challenge mode, if I have to be honest, where you have the bolt multiplier, but even in the base game, if you have, again, that much patience, you can stay there and farm bolts to your heart's content in order to get the more expensive weapons. The one thing that is a bit odd is that the crates just pop up back in like that, instead of actually respawning properly. It really feels beta test level.
Yeah, that does feel weird given all the other effects and whatnot that this game employs.
I think it's because the devs genuinely probably imagine that the players will just run to the finish line and then, you know, go back to the entrance, but I don't know. I think Insomniac would be the kind of devs that would expect the players to actually do this kind of exploit, or maybe, you know, might have been a bit out of touch since, as I mentioned, they closed down their forums in 2017, so, you know.
I do wonder if maybe it comes back to that classic case of they just ran out of time, maybe, and like, maybe they were going to address that, but with limited time, they figured, okay, fine, if it's in there, we'll let them exploit it, and who knows, they might actually like that.
You gonna love that upgrade.
I'm sure I will.
Well, butter my biscuits. Can I get any more southern?
Have we checked what else, sorry, you know, Miss Durcon's VA has done, you know, in her
Courtney
career?
Taylor, let's see, she was Dasha in Date Everything. Oh, she was Wonder Woman in DC Dark Legion. Not exactly sure what that game is, but it apparently just came out last year. She was Dominique Lance.
Dark Legion, I guess.
At least it's not a Dark Brotherhood. She was Dominique Lanster in The Legend of Heroes, Trails Through Daybreak 2.
Okay.
Cruncher of Bones in The Imaginary. She played Fady Boss in Secret Level. I'm not sure which game that's based on.
Well, no, I don't remember. Maybe she's one of the characters in the Concord episode, for all I know. Who knows?
She played Ida in The Legend of Heroes, Trails Through Daybreak, the first game. She was Magic in X-Men 97. Good for her.
Good for her.
Oh, and she was Agatha Harkness in Marvel's Midnight Suns, the video game. I'm guessing that's something you're more familiar with, Tio.
Yes, it's the XCOM clone done by the same devs, starring a bunch of Marvel characters, more based around their comic book counterpart and more focused on the supernatural stuff.
I've heard most people say the best thing about that game is hands down the writing.
Yeah, believe it or not, because it was released around the early... Again, the updates came around about the early 2020s. Morbius is actually one of the DLC characters, and of course, that will waste no time with the meme.
Yes. Oh boy, cosmetic customizations
like I said,
too.
It's the costume that you can have, but again, I only do that for the extra part, just to showcase how they look on the character.
Do Ratchet and Rivet also share gear and whatnot?
Yes, those are not, they are basically interchangeable between them, so, you know, there's that too.
What does it say?
Phantom.
Fuck
Moidoy,
you.
Captain Quantum. Klatchki?
Basically the Emperor's hit list.
Attention, Resistance. I'm posting the Emperor's hit list to our network. Come on, let's fix that communicator. We've got a dimension to save before the Emperor finds us too.
So yeah, next time we will have to go to the Sargasso debris field at the bar of Mr. Zircon. Yes, that's what he's doing, in order to actually fix Clank's communicator. In this
then.
No Man's Sky sequence, literally, they're just jumping like that. So, see you for that.
See ya.
Yeah.